She entered that shop with nothing but hope and a gentle smile. But within less than a minute the smile vanished. Whispers became laughter, and laughter humiliation. They did not notice her struggle, her dreams, or worthiness, just the color of her skin and what she was wearing. That day, a black woman was belittled in a world that already presumed against her before she even opened her mouth. But what they did not know was, the very same woman they taunted would be standing in a position none of them would ever be able to achieve. How did it come about? Let us travel back to where everything started. It was a sunny Monday morning when Alicia, a 29-year-old single mom, alighted from the bus with her faded handbag and a folder full of hope. She double-shifted at a small diner, keeping every tip for evening courses in business management. For her, school wasn't an aspiration, it was her ticket out. She passed by the very same high-end boutique every morning on her way to work, gazing through the glass at the mannequins, not with a sense of longing, but with steely resolve. That day was different. Perhaps because she had at last saved enough to purchase a second-hand suit to wear on her interview. But as she entered that shop, expecting to try on something professional and reasonably priced, the world she'd been struggling so desperately to join suddenly went icy. The stares, the murmurs. Something warned her this was not going to be just another day. The instant Alicia stepped through those glass doors, the air was different. The quiet hum of ambient music couldn't mask the piercing silence trailing behind her. She smiled demurely, holding onto her tiny purse, not realizing that each set of eyes in the room had already predetermined who she was. The sales associate behind the counter shot a glance her way, then muttered something to a colleague. They both chuckled, that laugh which cuts more deeply than words ever might. Alicia crept along the aisles, running her fingers over the fabrics she'd previously encountered from afar. For the first time, she allowed herself to wonder what it would be like to be somewhere like this, to enter and be noticed rather than criticized. But that fantasy was destroyed when a voice shouted out, harsh and patronizing, "Can I assist you with something? In particular?" It wasn't a question. It was a warning. She turned, forcing a smile. "Just looking," she said quietly. But the woman's eyes never softened. Another worker came to stand beside her, a little too close, their eyes weighted with suspicion. The minutes ticked by, but it felt like hours. Every step Alicia took was monitored, every look misinterpreted. And then, the coup de grace, the security guard. Tall, serious, and unsmiling, he walked up to her as though she'd committed an offense. "Ma'am," he told her, "I'll have to inspect your bag." Perplexity flashed over her face. "My bag? But I haven't even—" He did not care. The room became silent, consumers gazing like onlookers at a spectacle they had already witnessed. Someone took out a phone, filming. Alicia's fingers shook as she unzipped her purse, finding nothing but her wallet, transit pass, and that neatly creased folder of resumes, the evidence of her effort, now exposed to the public. No apology, only the same cold glares. She felt her dignity slipping, replaced by anger and shame. She stormed out without a word, but inside, something had altered. Not shattered, not yet, just searing. Outside, the sunlight struck her face, but it no longer felt warm. Each step home relived the humiliation, the giggling in her mind. They perceived her as poor, as unworthy, as less. But what they didn't realize, what even she didn't fully get in this moment, was that this wasn't the end of the tale. It was the flame that would fuel all that followed. Because sometimes, the worst kind of pain isn't what breaks you. It's what builds you for the moment the world least expects. Weeks went by, but the experience lingered in Alicia's mind like in shadows she could not escape. Each shift at the diner, each bus ride home from it, she relived the humiliation. The taunts, the ridicule, the cell phone cameras recording her anguish. But behind her unassuming eyes, something was different. She would not let that become her. Late at night, after she had put her son to bed, she lay awake, completing business loan applications, revising proposals, and taking online courses. With each "no," she became more driven. Each question in her mind became her motivation to persevere. And then the time arrived. 2 years passed, and she stood in front of the same boutique. But now, however, the name on the new high-end store next door wasn't strange. It was hers. Alicia's Atelier. The opening day attracted a crowd. Reporters, area clients, and, unsuspectingly, the same boutique staff who had ridiculed her. They passed by, eyes growing wide as they caught sight of the signs, the waiting crowd, the stylish woman at the door greeting investors. When the cameras turned to her, Alicia smiled. The same quiet smile she once wore walking into that store, but this time, it was different. It was the smile of someone who had been underestimated and had turned that pain into power. Then, as if destiny insisted on one final judgment, the store manager who had humiliated her came over, feigning congratulations. Alicia locked eyes with hers and said bluntly, "Thank you for the reminder of who I never want to become." Then, the crowd was silent. Cameras clicked. At that moment, the shame of her past was rewritten. Not in fury, but in victory. Because sometimes justice isn't in a courtroom. It's when the world that used to look down on you has no other choice but to look up. Over the next few months, Alicia's tale extended far beyond her city limits. Media outlets referred to her as an inspiration. But for her, it wasn't fame, it was dignity. The same individuals who once avoided her eyes were now standing in her shop, acknowledging her strength. But she knew better than to think that her triumph was greater than success. It was validation that worth is not measured by riches, color, or how the world perceives you. Nevertheless, Alicia could not help but remember that moment, standing there in that shop, embarrassed for being. She knew that for each woman like her who succeeds, there are thousands more still silenced, still struggling to be heard. That realization tormented her worse than the memory ever did. So she began anew. A scholarship for women of color going for business degrees. An opportunity for others to go through doors that previously closed in her face. And with each tale she assisted, she rewrote a tiny bit of the one that shattered her. But the truth is, accounts like Alicia's are not unheard of. They're simply seldom spoken. Racism does not always yell. It whispers sometimes in judgment, exclusion, and silence. It wears the mask of smiling platitudes and raised eyebrows, yet its effects are just as profound. Alicia's tale reminds us that strength can conquer wars, yet it should not need to struggle so intensely in order to be recognized as equal. Because the question is not whether Alicia disproved them. She did. The question is, how many more Alicias will have to stand up before the world learns to stop knocking them down?